The story begins with a little boy named Steve who dreamed of becoming the greatest miner in the world. He loved exploring, building, and inventing. But every time he tried to enter the local mine, a grumpy old man would stop him. You see, there was a rule. Kids weren't allowed. Only adults could go in. Time passed, and Steve grew up into a man. But life didn't go exactly as he had imagined. He ended up working as a door-to-door salesman, stuck in the same boring routine every day. He felt like his life was slowly slipping away. Then one day, while having lunch alone, he remembered the dream he had as a child, a dream he had long forgotten. Suddenly, that fire inside him was reignited. He decided to return to the mine, and this time, nothing in the world could stop him. He made it to the mine, and sure enough, the grumpy old man was still there. But Steve walked right up to him, shoved past him, and entered. He began digging like a madman, as if trying to make up for all the lost time. While digging, he stumbled upon two strange artifacts, a crystal cube and another called the creation cube. When he placed them together, boom, a portal opened to a magical place. The overworld of Minecraft, a world where anything was possible. He even met a bouncy little sheep, and beside it, he built 3 stunning houses. Steve had finally become the architect of his dreams. In his adventures, Steve encountered a wild, angry wolf that tried to eat him at first. But with a bone that had a little bit of meat on it, Steve managed to tame the beast. He named him Dennis, and from that moment on, they became best friends. Together, they built wonders and shaped the world however they pleased. Soon, all the animals joined them in peace. Days turned into weeks as they continued to build, explore, and discover, until one day, Steve came across some ancient ruins. Inside a perfectly placed chest, he found a new portal. This one led to the nether, a dark, gloomy dimension where creativity and innovation didn't exist. That world was crawling with piglins, greedy, savage creatures who served an evil witch named Malgosha. She had once dreamed of becoming a dancer, but after a rough childhood, her people mocked her, and even her own father kicked her out, calling her a disgrace. Since then, she lived only for hate. Malgosha was obsessed with the creation cube. She wanted it to rule all the worlds in the universe. But Steve was clever and brave. He managed to escape with the magic cube and entrusted it to Dennis with one mission: return it to Earth and hide it in a place where no one could ever find it. Dennis carried out the mission perfectly, traveling across dimensions and concealing the most powerful artifact in existence. As long as it stayed hidden, the overworld would remain safe. Years later, we meet Gary Garrison, a young man who revolutionized the gaming world when he became the star of the game orchestra. He had a wild talent. He could toss trash with laser-like precision, earning him the title Trash Guy. His fame skyrocketed. He even landed a $1 million deal. He had it all, until one day, he got an eviction notice. Just like that, he fell from the top straight to the bottom. Now, completely broke, Gary clung to any chance to climb back to the top. He headed to an auction in the area, hoping to find something cheap to flip for profit. One of the workers at the auction whispered about a mysterious, ancient artifact, rumored to be extremely valuable. Gary was intrigued. He said he might consider buying it if they gave him a good discount and if they let him examine it first. The auction began, and after some bidding and minor disagreements, Gary won the mysterious artifact for $900, agreeing to pay in 6 monthly installments. When he opened the box, he was shocked. It was completely empty. He felt like he'd been swindled and angrily slammed the lid. Without realizing it, the creation cube was inside, hidden in plain sight. He was furious and frustrated, overwhelmed by disappointment. In his anger, he didn't notice someone nearby had heard him complaining about being completely broke. The stranger said, "Maybe this is the time you stop chasing after treasures in shady auctions like this." At the same time, we meet Henry and his older sister Natalie, who had just moved to the city after their mother passed away. Natalie was trying to get back on her feet and worked a simple job that barely covered their new apartment's rent. They were welcomed by Dawn, a friendly real estate agent, who greeted them with kind words and a warm spirit. The next morning, Natalie made breakfast for Henry, pizza, so he could take it to school and share it with his new classmates. She even gave him a bottle of perfume to help him feel loved. But Henry was still deeply affected by the change and the pain of losing their mother. He barely said thank you and left for school. Elsewhere, Gary was cleaning some old junk in his shop. Suddenly, Henry walked in. The boy was curious and even offered pizza in exchange for advice. Gary, who liked to call himself the life game vendor, said, "My wisdom costs $50 an hour," laughing with him a little, and then gave him some heartfelt words. He told Henry that friends are like puzzles. Sometimes you have all the pieces, but sometimes there's just one piece missing to make you feel complete. He also said, "You can't be a team by yourself. You need someone else to overcome anything." Henry was moved by the words, left the pizza behind, and went to class. At school, he met the principal, who gave him her business card. During their conversation, she suddenly said her marriage had been dead for years, but they stayed together because they loved their dogs. After that, Henry entered the classroom, where the teacher, joking bitterly, complained to the students about how much he hated his life. The class began a group project, and Henry made a mistake, putting a piece in the wrong place. Suddenly, the prototype for the flying jacket went wild, and at that very moment, Natalie, who was working nearby, was terrified when the crazy device crashed into her building. The principal went nuts and demanded to speak with Henry's guardian. Henry panicked and called Gary, begging him to pretend to be his uncle. As soon as Gary heard that Henry had $26 in cash, he immediately agreed. While they tried to explain what happened to the principal, Henry spotted the strange cube at the back of the shop and asked about it. Gary scowled and told him he was selling it for $95, not really knowing what it was. But while searching through some boxes, they found an old instruction manual. One warning was written in large letters. Under no circumstances should the ball and the crystal cube be combined. They even added, "Don't do it, even if you're broke and you think there's a hidden treasure inside." Of course, driven by curiosity and completely ignoring the warning, they decided to see what this thing was all about. They went to an abandoned mine to check if there was any power or something going on, not knowing they were about to embark on an adventure that would change their lives forever. Meanwhile, Natalie noticed Henry had been gone for a while and hadn't come home. She was worried and didn't know what to do, so she called the real estate agent, Dawn, and used a location tracking app. She was able to pinpoint his location. He was exploring an old abandoned mine. Without wasting any time, they ran quickly to search for him, and when they arrived, they saw something crazy and dangerous indeed. The mysterious cube was glowing and emitting strange energy that pulled Henry toward it. Without thinking, they all grabbed it, and suddenly, one by one, they were sucked into the vortex and passed through the gateway, heading straight to the overworld. Gary was amazed by the new world around them and proudly walked forward, saying he'd been a video game legend since 1989. Right after that, they met the famous pink sheep. It looked at them curiously, but they weren't alone. There was a villager who had seen the portal open and decided to follow it. He passed through to Earth, and a crazy connection between the two worlds began. Meanwhile, in the netherworld, the gloomy warning, Innie and the piglins were extremely bored from all the digging. They hadn't found a single piece of gold. Malosha was angry again and threatened them with something worse than death. If they didn't find treasure soon, she would turn them into pieces of roasted pork. At that moment, she received a signal that the ball's portal was activating again. She rushed to confront Steve, who was still her prisoner. She knew he was the one who stole the ball. Without much talking, she let him go but gave him a harsh condition. If he wanted to save his wolf, Odin, whom she had captured, he had to bring her the ball from the overworld. Back in the overworld, Gary was desperately trying to impress the pink sheep, begging it to give him quests to search for gold. Time passed, but nothing happened. Suddenly, Dennis the wolf appeared, running toward them and howling loudly. The pink sheep backed away, and the whole area fell silent. But this silence didn't last long. Terrifying sounds began to rise. Hunter skeletons, giant spiders, zombies, and creepers crawled out of the darkness and launched their attack with full force. Everyone ran for their lives, but Henry didn't freeze. He used his mind and started building with blocks, creating defenses to protect the others. Gary hid until a creeper exploded right next to him, leaving him shocked. That scream revealed his position, and zombies quickly surrounded him. Amidst this chaos, the pink sheep was also captured. At that very moment, the rest of the team arrived to help Gary. The battle was fierce, but suddenly, Steve appeared like a superhero with crazy skills. He wiped out all the enemies, leaving everyone stunned. Afterward, the sun began to rise, and the zombies burned in the morning light. Steve told them he had come for the sovereignty ball and offered them a deal. He would help them return to Earth, but in exchange, he would take the ball for himself. But without the crystal cube, there was no way to travel safe, so they would have to return the cube or find another way. Meanwhile, the villager who had followed them from the portal crashed his Jeep into the school principal's car as she drove, distracted and worried about a potential lawsuit against her. Quickly, she tried to remain calm and offered him dinner, saying, "Everyone these days wants to sue me, but you seem like a sensible man." Back to the boys again. The team arrived at a peaceful village filled with curious, friendly villagers. They met new characters, the legendary Enzur, the wise llama, and the giant iron golem, who protected the place with strength and honor. To regain their energy, they sat down to eat roasted chicken. Steve, always cautious, warned them that the chicken was roasted over volcanic lava and was still burning. But Gary, who was too proud and didn't want to look weak, ignored the warning and took a big bite, enduring the pain to maintain his composure in front of everyone. Back in the netherworld, Malosha was losing her temper. She was fed up with the constant failures. She called for her strongest general, Chongus, the mightiest and kindest of all the piglins. She told him there were 4 strangers, calling them the Rounders, who had the ball. Before sending him off, she gave him a special herb, a charm to prevent him and his soldiers from turning into pieces of roasted pork or zombies during the journey. She said, "No more playing around," and gave him the order, "Bring me the ball, no matter the cost." Meanwhile, in the overworld, the group continued their journey toward the legendary castle. On the way, they reached Steve's warehouse, a magical place filled with tools, gadgets, and all sorts of amazing things. There, they found the Ender Pearl, an ancient artifact that allows you to teleport to any place you throw. Of course, Gary, the curious one, used it immediately, and without realizing it, it turned out to be the last one they had. After that, Steve taught them how to craft tools from the materials of this world. Gary got excited and crafted a weapon for himself. It looked a little strange, but it worked. As for Henry, he gathered some scraps from the real world, combined them with Minecraft materials, and came up with something genuinely useful. Afterward, Gary took Steve aside to talk to him. He confessed that he had read the note hidden inside the ball and asked him directly about the treasure mentioned in it. Steve admitted, "Yes, I have a treasure chest full of gold, but it's hidden deep within the mines, far from the castle, and reaching it is highly risky." But Gary didn't glance at him and said no gold means no ball. So they descended into the mines, and as soon as they began moving, the piglins appeared. General Chongus introduced himself to Steve, polite, but with a voice that said, "I can kill you in an instant." As usual, Steve tried to take charge, but Gary, feeling a bit jealous, wanted to show off. He jumped into the middle of the confrontation, holding his strange weapon, and attacked Chongus, but he missed completely, hitting Steve instead. Chaos broke out, and everyone split into battle. Natalie and Dawn ended up in their own group, while the boys, Gary and Henry, separated from them. Before they split, they agreed to meet at the castle to help each other escape. Steve distributed special flying wings, but he only had 2 pairs, so he made a sudden move and grabbed Gary, and they flew together. What followed was a crazy aerial chase. They flew between walls, dodging sharp attacks, performing crazy moves to escape the piglin army. At one point, they flew over a peaceful field full of sleeping pandas, unaware of the madness happening above. In the end, Gary and Steve executed a water drop move and safely landed in a lake without a scratch. Back in our world, the school principal was enjoying an unexpected dinner date with the villager she had crashed into with her car. During dinner, she confessed to him that she was still divorced and said her ex-husband had no personality. Back in the overworld, Steve began telling the group about Malosha. He said she once dreamed of becoming a world-class dancer. Her movements were graceful and elegant, far ahead of the rigid traditions of glancing. But her father had expelled her and shattered her because of her passion for dance. Since then, she swore never to love beauty or creativity again. Now, if she gets the ball, she will destroy the overworld and all the innocent creatures. But Steve was conflicted. He needed the ball to save his wolf, Dennis, who is still held captive by Malosha in the oath. Malosha was seething with rage because Chongus had failed her. She no longer had the patience. She unleashed her deadly weapon, the Great Pig, a giant monster with a mechanical brain, now in a state of blind fury. Without thinking, General Chongus was crushed underfoot. Then, with a booming voice, Malosha gave her first order, "Go and bring me the ball." At the same time, Natalie and real estate agent Dawn encountered someone they hadn't expected. They found themselves face to face with Dennis, Steve's legendary wolf. Dawn, being clever, offered him a bone to earn his trust. The wolf was touched by the gesture and allowed them to approach him. Since they knew he belonged to Steve, they decided to follow him in hopes that he would lead them to the rest of the group. Meanwhile, underground, the boys had finally reached the depths where the precious gold was hidden. But Steve, with his sharp nose like a skilled miner, smelled something foul, a scent he knew all too well, the scent of the oath herb. That could only mean one thing. The Great Pig had arrived. Steve wasted no time. He told the others there was a safe room ahead, and they quickly jumped into mine carts and sped off at full speed. But at the very moment they needed speed the most, their redstone ran out, stopping the carts right in front of their creeper farm. And just when things couldn't get worse, the Great Pig appeared, roaring with fury. They were trapped, and there were no other options. Steve and Gary made a crazy decision. They triggered all the creepers, causing a massive explosion that shook the entire mine and even rattled the world beneath them. From the smoke and rubble, they made their escape. They were safe, but emotionally shattered. Tension rose, and Henry exploded at Gary. He was angry about their loss of the gold. Gary, feeling a mix of anger and depression, replied coldly, "I need that gold. It's the only way I won't be broke." Then he said to Henry, "You wouldn't understand. You're still a kid." But Henry looked him in the eye and said, "Yes, I'm a kid, but you're not alone. I'm your friend." Gary fell silent, touched by Henry's words. Something changed inside both of them. A new friendship was born. They began planning their heist on the castle. According to Steve, the place had 3 levels. The first level, guarded by villagers trained in combat, strict and organized, with no room for jokes. The second level, controlled by summoners, dark wizards capable of summoning real nightmares. The last level, where the Ender Crystal was kept, guarded by the Enderman itself, a professional killer capable of finishing you with a single glance. Before they could move, the villagers set a trap for them, attacking the adults and dragging them into an underground fighting club, a brutal battle arena with no rules. Steve watched from the shadows, hiding as Gary was thrown into the ring. He was tossed into the center, facing his opponent, a small zombie riding a bloodthirsty wild chicken. The scene was almost comical, but the little boy fought like a devil. At the same time, Henry managed to sneak into the 3rd level to the vault. The room was dark and terrifying, and there, the Enderman waited for him with no escape. Henry grabbed his diamond sword and struck. The battle was insane, but with courage and skill, Henry emerged victorious. As a reward for his victory, he received the instant transmission ball, a magical artifact that lets you teleport across the overworld in an instant, or maybe even further. After they left the castle, the group was exhausted, but they were close to finishing their mission. Then they faced their worst nightmare, Malosha, the pig witch. She had been watching them using the scent of the magical ball. With a wicked smile, she snatched the creation cube and the Enderman crystal, without any fight or warning, with total arrogance, and then disappeared into the darkness of the oath as though she had won. They tried to run, knowing there was no way to recover those artifacts again. But Gary didn't move. He stood still, staring ahead, his eyes burning with the fire of defiance. He said to them, "If we're gonna lose, let's lose with style," then raised his arms and shouted, "It's heavy metal time." Then he blew himself up in a final sacrifice to stop Malosha from killing them instantly. The explosive wave sent everyone flying in all directions, and the kids were in a terrible state, barely conscious amidst the rubble. Moments later, Dennis found Steve and hit him to wake him up. Steve calmly got up. Nearby, Henry began to move. He was in pain, but still alive. Amidst the destruction, he spotted a strange little building, the comfy crow's nest. Dawn made it a temporary shelter, so they could reunite with Natalie and Dawn. The group realized just how bad things were. Darkness was spreading throughout the upper world, and Malosha's power was swallowing everything. It was time for Gary, for the world, and everything they had been through. They decided to fight again. They started crafting new, stronger, and smarter tools. Henry, holding the instant transmission ball, began to make a plan. He modified the iron golem and equipped them with ultra-speed units. Now, they had an army of raging iron golems, ready to face the legions of O. Malosha saw them approaching and laughed. Golems only fight if provoked, but a reckless little pig punched first, and that was all they needed. The golem went mad, and the battle began. Malosha grew furious and unleashed her deadly weapon, the Great Pig. But she didn't expect that the heroes had created their ultimate golem, a giant even bigger and stronger, made from a secret alloy. The two monsters collided in a thunderous battle, shaking the upper world to its foundations. Meanwhile, Steve faced Malosha. He was armored from head to toe in hand-carved diamond armor, wielding a massive diamond sword that looked legendary. But Malosha was unfazed. She knew her dark magic was stronger than any sword. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Henry was making his way toward the Sovereignty Ball, while Natalie found herself alone. At the moment the Great Pig broke free from its battle with the golem, it charged toward her. There was no escape. But before the worst could happen, a voice rang out in the area. It was Dawn, standing proudly atop a hill, surrounded by packs of wild wolves. Somehow, she had tamed them and united with them. With a sharp whistle, she gave them the order to attack. The wolves pounced on the Great Pig, and a brutal, primal battle began. Amidst the chaos, the Great Pig, in a fit of rage, released a deadly beam toward Henry, striking him and sending him crashing down. The battlefield went silent, and everyone froze. Then Gary emerged from the smoke and fire, rising from the ashes like a phoenix. He ran fast, snatched Henry, and dragged him to safety. With what little strength remained, the heroes regrouped, destroyed Malosha's dark tools, and threw the sovereignty ball into the abyss. Suddenly, light began to return. The upper world breathed again, and balance was restored. But at the moment the ball was falling, the great pig grabbed it, and all hope seemed lost. Until the ultimate golem delivered a crushing, devastating blow that stunned the beast, reclaimed the ball, and secured it once and for all. With the ball back in their hands, it was time for the final confrontation. Steve stepped forward to face Malosha. She was weak, trapped, and defeated. He looked in her eyes and said, "You lost." But even in that moment, she tried to deceive him 3 times. She attacked him with a hidden knife, and each time, Steve deflected her blows. He knew the fight was over, but instead of finishing her off, he walked away, leaving her alive to live with the shame of defeat. With the danger finally gone, Steve said his goodbyes to the group. He then turned to Henry and offered him a place in the upper world, a chance to stay and start a new life. But Henry smiled and shook his head in refusal. He was going home. Steve respected his decision. Then, he reunited with Dennis, his loyal wolf. But he surprised everyone when he knelt beside Dennis and handed the reins to Dawn with a kind smile. Steve said to her, "I need a peaceful life, and you deserve one too." He then embraced Gary and said, "You're a loyal friend and a brave warrior." He thanked Natalie and Dawn for their courage and stood watching them cross the portal, one after another. As he was about to return to his quiet life in the upper world, Steve paused for a moment. He looked around, thought for a second, and then with renewed determination, crossed the portal and returned to our world on Earth. Days passed, and everything changed. Gary had risen through the ranks, and his place became very famous. He became a master in both work and play. He and the group created a new video game inspired by their crazy adventures, and life became paradise. As for Dawn, she left her real estate job and now lived a life of adventure, with Dennis by her side wherever they went, creating festive atmospheres wherever they went, as her new slogan said. Natalie opened a private school to teach self-defense and became the local heroine and a symbol of the community. Finally, Henry fixed his pilot jacket and now soared through the skies, living his dream. And in the end, a love story blossomed between the villager and the school principal. They now spoke the human language fluently, and she had learned the villager's language. Since that crazy night they met, he never thought of anything else. He took her hand, knelt on one knee, and asked for her hand in marriage. And that's the end of the movie, until we meet again in a new recap. If you love movies and movie recaps, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more. Hit like if you enjoyed the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.